Hey guys, Arm&Gun here today with a video overview on the G36C. This little beauty right here. This actually is a 300 blackout barrel by Tommy Built installed, but that is just one of many things we're going to be covering in this video. We're going to start out with a brief run through of the controls, then we'll scoot through the features of the rifle, its specifications, and then we'll touch on a little bit of design detail, and then finally we'll talk about the various aftermarket, non-OEM support, because there's been Knights, B&T, lots of really reputable companies have made kit for these things, and including Tommy Built now, and it's just a lot of cool stuff. This is a fantastic firearm, and yes, of course, we'll touch upon the melty barrel issue with this guy as well, insofar as to say it supposedly loses a ton of accuracy when it heats up. Spoiler alert, it's not really the case. Well, it is and it isn't, but we'll talk more about that later. And guys, if you're interested, this is actually a 3-part video on this little gun. We did a POV first-person style shooting video, followed by a full build video actually. I've got the other one still taken apart here and all the components. So basically we started out with that basic unit right there, put it all together, including the Tommy Built 300 blackout kit, which again, we then tested in the shooting video, both with subs and supers. The thing performed super well. All right guys, first things first, let's grab this guy off the wall and run through some of the controls. Give you guys a brief idea how to operate this thing. So first things first, we're clear. Magazine locks back on the last round. Paddle mag release right here, like an AK, but they do insert straight like an AR. Not always standard, but this guy has a little bolt release right here in the trigger guard. So that's how that works. If you have the mag out, technically there's a little bolt hold up in here. If you pull this back, you can, if you can just catch the edge of that, you can kind of lift it up, but it's not very practical. Then for safeties, we have a selector right here. That's fire, that's safe. There are, of course, different triggers and lowers. You have the Navy style pictogram, or you can have the typical SEF triggers. Give you guys a quick trigger pull while we're at it. A little bit of take up, then some grit, mush. Then there's eventually a wall and you pull through that. It's decently tight. I've heard a little trick that some people do is they pull out one of the springs. There's 2 springs in there and that kind of lightens it up. Or you can drop in an SL8 trigger, which is compatible and much nicer. Also nice, all the controls are ambi. You have these replicated over here as well. The paddle mag is obviously ambi, as is the bolt controls. And even the charging handle, because that's located inside this carry handle right here. And the charging dongle goes either way. So pull it out to the left, cycle it. It is a reciprocating unit, but because it's on the top, it's cycling inside here. That's really not interfering with much. It also does have a bolt-in forward assist. This can be run from both sides. And then usually when running it back, that dongle flips out under just the inertial force and swings back to neutral. Somewhat like the AR-18 system, everything is contained within the receiver itself, so you can actually fire this thing with the stock folded. The stock deploys very quickly, locks into place quite firmly as well. It's only attached with this really big roll pin right here, so you can swap the stocks fairly easily. There are a number of different versions out there from HK themselves. There, this is actually a little easier with the camera popped out, so that's the bulk of the controls. Moving on to features and specs. Well, this is very first and foremost a modular system. Most of you will be aware that there are multiple variants of the G36. There's the G36C Compact, that's what that stands for. The K for Kurz, or short, it's German for short. Then there's the E, which is the full-size version, or the V as it's now known. And even a machine gun MG variant with a heavier barrel bipod, and is typically seen with that beta drum mag. Pretty cool stuff. Larry Vickers did a video on it a while back. But the nice thing is basically all the guns share most of the same components. Same stock interface, and for the most part the same stocks, the same receiver, the same magwell, the same lower assemblies, the same optic setups. All the guns have the same optics interface, the same bolt carry system and return spring. This one does have a different spring in it, but only because this one is running a 300 blackout kit. Otherwise, the only actual parts that change between the models would be your handguards. Obviously there's different lengths of handguards, different lengths of barrels, and then the piston pusher system is a different length. The piston itself, the gas block, that all itself is the same. It's very quick and easy to disassemble, tool-free. You just run these push pins out, and that basically lets you field strip the entire firearm. The G36 breaks down into 4 primary components for basic field strip, maintenance, and cleaning. So you have your basic receiver group block, or whatever you want to call that. Stock, optic, magwell, handguard, receiver chunk, all that good stuff in there. Then your recoil assembly, return spring and whatnot, your trigger group, which is in your lower, and your bolt carrier group. That's everything right there. Ready to go. You can do simple things as well, like changing out the magwell to like a stand-in compatible magwell. You can swap out lowers, you can swap well stocks. Again, a little bit more work because you have to drive out that big roll pin. Optic setups, if you want to run a different optic or an optics rail, all you have to do is remove these 3 bits right here, and you can swap those all off really easily as well. And again, everything's interchangeable between all of the HK G36 variants. Removal of the barrel itself is really the only truly technical or kind of user beware item, and I covered that in detail in my build video. If you guys want to check that out, that'll be the previous video in my channel. But I go through that and a couple special tools that make that job pretty much a breeze. Again, for specs, this is a closed bolt firing system, rotating bolt. It's a short stroke gas operated piston system. This guy has a 228mm or basically 9-inch barrel. Cold hammer forged, would be a 1 in 7 twist or so for the 5.56 version. Again, this is 300 blackout, so we're gonna be different. And this gun in general is about 3 kilograms. It's gonna vary a little bit based on what attachments and whatnot you have on there, but in general, around 3 kilos or 6.5 or so pounds. Total length collapsed is 19.7 inches, and then extended, I'm not sure if extended is with the C stock. There's a C version of the stock, it's a little more compact, or the full-size stock, but it's around 28.8 inches. And then the rate of fire on full auto, again with 5.56, is 750 rounds a minute, approximately. I've pulled these numbers off of HK's specifications site, so individual units may vary a little bit. The last big thing to talk about the G36 in terms of features or specs is the fact that it is a largely polymer gun. Even the receiver is polymer, however there is a metal trunnion or barrel extension basically molded inside here. And that's part of, again, why the barrel removal process itself is, it's not, I'm gonna say delicate, it could be delicate, but you do want to know what you're doing. You want to be using the proper tools when doing that. Now, benefits of polymer, generally it's lighter than metal, but the big thing is thermal conductivity. Basically the fact that polymer isn't very good at it. So in the summer, these things don't get as hot. They're not as hot to the touch, and they're not as cold to the touch in winter like metal. Now, I love my metal receiver firearms, but I'm playing in both the extremes of winter and summer where I live, experiencing minus 40 degrees. I've shot in minus 25 degrees before and actually filmed while doing so. And then I've shot also when it's been super hot. And again, the plastic guns, they're always comfortable. Metal guns are always not, but sometimes it's just the sacrifices we make for the things we love. At any rate, that also makes them impervious to rust or things like that. They're not going to swell up like wood in a jungle environment or really humid environment. And it is cheap and easy to mass produce. Next up, a little bit of a design and history lesson for you guys. And actually, this was the gun that phased out the G3 in German military. And the G3 was a lingering vestige of the Cold War, and HK did make 5.56 versions of the G3 platform, basically known as the HK33 line, 33, 33K, and the 53, which is this guy right here. And it is a phenomenally cool gun. Holy cow. This thing is just, just friggin' love this thing. Basically, the HK53 is the G36C of the HK33 line. Or you could also call it something like the AK-74U of the G36. At any rate, super cool gun. We'll be talking more about it on the channel in the future as well. But at any rate, German military didn't actually adopt those. HK just produced those for foreign sales. And actually when the German did go to evaluate them, they rejected them. Now, a big part of basically why nothing was really happening since the G3 was Germany was looking at moving to the G11 platform with caseless ammunition, that super futuristic looking thing. And HK dumped a lot of money into it. And then, the Cold War kind of ended when the USSR kind of broke apart. The wall fell and Germany kind of scrapped that program. So then immediately HK was looking to develop a new 5.56 caliber firearm to replace the G3. So in about 1990, they began developing this thing. This was originally called the Project 50 or the HK50. It's kind of the design code name for the G36. And their design years lasted from 90 to 95. Then they began doing production in 96, and it was formally adopted by the German military in 1997. And it has been produced ever since, now in use by more than 40 other countries and tons of law enforcement militaries throughout them. Now the G36K, which is sized between the C compact and the E, the full-size version, that entered into production a year later in 1997. And then the G36C, this little guy right here, came to be in 2001. Now the G36 has been around for a long time, been used by a bunch of people. More than 250,000 have been made, and they've been made by a few different companies. Of course by HK, but they were also licensed out to production in Spain and in Saudi Arabia. And due to all these firearms, lasting that now, they're 20, 25 years old, and basically in some cases now, a lot of other companies have stepped up to produce parts for them to, kind of modernize them or to address certain things or whatnot. So some of those, such as this C-length handguard, which was designed by SBR in Sweden, this thing is really cool. Really admire their production capabilities and the creativity of these guys. These guys have a new AR-10 system in the works. Definitely recommend checking that out because, man, it is really cool. And you've also seen things from the Titans like Knight's Armament Co. They've done a bunch of parts for the G36. B&T has done different quad rails and things like that for them as well. And even HK now has different generations of handguards and whatnot. Of course, there's a bunch of different sights. This is probably a sight many more of you guys have seen typically on things like the G36. All you got to do is swap out 3 little sets of hardware in there, and these things just slips right on to the integrated optic mounting system. So it's pretty slick. And again, this, the more modern version of it with integrated optic sights, the Hensoldt dual optic, and there's also a single optic as well. All of those are cross-compatible. And actually, speaking of the Spur, they also make one as well, and it is friggin' gorgeous. And I still really want to find one. I'm guessing I owe you guys a close-up look of the dual optic here as well. This thing is pretty slick. There's actually a sliding cover there so you can gather natural light to light up the little red dot in here. So there's a little guy right here, and that's what this manual dial is for. Off, and then you have varying degrees of on. You can see it in there, just barely. I'll try and give you guys a close-up. That's a little dot. Now, you're not going to be able to see inside this optic, but basically either 1 power or 3 power, depending on which model you got. That comes right over here and looks right through this space here. Very classic German, very outdated. And now you see shorter rail mounts on here that come right across, still give you access to the charging handle, but that you can mount modern optics to. But now, thanks to people like TommyBuilt, that the G36 is ending up on the civilian scene, TommyBuilt is also bringing a lot of other cool stuff to market as well. He's got this neat handguard system that kind of mimics that of the MP7 with that cool little vertical grip there. He's got his 300 blackout system there. He's got a different lower assembly. You can throw AR-15 triggers in and AR-15 grips. And the nice thing about his barrel system, apart from being a 300 blackout, which is just phenomenal in the G36C, again, check out my shooting video because it friggin' rocked. But it has standard, North American style thread pitches. That has a 5/8 by 24 thread pitch. So of course, we threw a cherry bomb and whistle tip from Q on that guy because it's 300 blackout out of a friggin' G36C. It had to be done. And now the topic of the meltiness. The G36C, does it suffer from a hot, gooey, yummy center? Ew, I don't know where I'm going with that. But, well, the answer is basically all guns lose accuracy. The groups open up as the barrels heat up. That's just physics, thermodynamics physics. So there ain't any really beating that. I mean, you can mitigate it. Some guns are better than others. And actually on that scale, the G36 ranks pretty well. So, I mean, there was a couple complaints, and I don't want to jump into this too much because actually Ian at Forgotten Weapons made a great video that kind of went a lot more into this issue. So if you really care about it, he's got like a 15 or 16 minute video talking all about that. But I've also seen some other videos by TFBTV and such. They did testing on G36s shortly after those reports or those rumors came out. They got groups cold and they heated them up with a couple mags and they tested the groups again. And again, they found that they didn't open up more than an acceptable amount. So realistically, it sounds like it was more of a bureaucratic and political issue kind of in Germany. So I don't know, but HK definitely got the short end of the stick there, though the court sided with them and they weren't actually sued by the German Ministry of Defense, so that was a plus. But in the end, that just meant HK was pushing its other modern 5.56 offering that much harder, that being the HK 416 series of firearms. I've got lots of videos out on this guy. I haven't really talked much about the upper yet. This is a MR223A3 lower with the updated ambi controls and such, but this is an OG 10.4 416 upper, which is really cool. I really like this guy. It's a slick little unit. We'll talk more about it in the future. And for those of you who noticed, this is Flecktarn camo. This is actually a combat shirt from UF Pro. And guys, this is friggin' sweet. Really dig this stuff. UF Pro, if you haven't checked them out before, make some fantastic gear. The pants they make literally changed my life. We'll have a video on that before long as well. Guys, thanks for taking a look at the G36C with me. Hit up the comments below for questions. I'll do my best to get to them in time. I generally keep a pretty close eye on these things. Next video series is going to be the GHM9G, that Glock lower. Big thanks to my buddies at Wolverine Supplies for sending that thing out to me. I've already had this little beauty out at the range, and it was a very fun time. Stay tuned for a Gallotech video coming out real soon too. That's the gun wall system in the background here. It's the same system I've been using for a long time elsewhere in the room, but we finally got the big wall in, and it's time to do a full video on it. Anyways, guys, thanks again. Catch you in the next one. Arm&Gun, out.